Usually, modern technology makes life easier, and definitely in terms of convenience, but also sometimes in terms of halacha as well. With the new technology, you take the principles and apply them. It could make life easier, i.e., for instance, DNA, for one. Assuming we accept DNA as authoritative in terms of perhaps permitting a woman to remarry when we only have some DNA evidence of the husband's death. That was a whole big tragedy, among other things. The World Trade Center was a tragedy in its own right, but an additional tragedy for many people who lost their husbands, and either they were speaking to them on the phone when it happened, they jumped. So in many issues in life, modern technology definitely helps in convenience, and in halacha, it sometimes could raise challenges for better or for worse. So in the DNA, it's a positive. However, regarding the wife of a Kohen, it might make it more problematic. What do I mean by a wife of a Kohen?
We were mentioning yesterday.
Exactly, as I said I'd get to, is we know there's a prohibition for a Kohen to come in contact with the dead. That only applies to male Kohanim and not women Kohanim. Not the daughter of a Kohen, not the wife of a Kohen. So there's a famous question in the Tshuvas hundreds of years ago, the question of whether the pregnant wife of a Kohen, can she enter a cemetery? Can she be in the same room as a dead body? So that's the question from years ago. And there was the famous answer of the Rokeach. The Rokeach is one of the earlier commentators. He poses a classic svek sveika. That we know in general, this halacha, there's a principle, savek d'oraisa l'chumra. A doubt regarding a biblical law was strict on. Savek d'Rabbanan l'kula. A doubt by rabbinic law will lenient on. And a svek sveika, you have a double doubt on a biblical law will lenient. So when they asked, the Rokeach is the first one to discuss it. When he discusses the question of a pregnant wife of a Kohen, can she enter a cemetery? So he said it was permitted. It was mutter based on a double doubt. What's the double doubt? One doubt is maybe it's a male fetus, maybe it's a female. And even if it's a male, maybe the fetus will be a nephil, won't live to fruition. Either there'll be a miscarriage before, or they'll die within the first 30 days, etc. And the child will be a nephil, so it's a double doubt. And according to Rokeach, a nephil doesn't have a problem of being makabel tuma. So it's a double doubt, and therefore we could be lenient with the wife of a Kohen. So if he asked the question a couple hundred years ago, or even less, the classical answer would be it is permitted. However, with the advent of modern technology, the sonogram, the ultrasound, where it's common practice when a pregnant woman goes in for a checkup, the doctor usually asks, if you want to know, he can tell you whether it's a male or a female. Sometimes you can't tell. Most of the time you probably can. Sometimes the parents don't want to know. So for the average parent, it's just an issue of do they want to know, do they want to know. It's not a halakha question. However, by the case of a wife of a Kohen, that poses some extra issues here. So it's twofold question. Number one is, would she be obligated to take a sonogram to find out if it is a male? Maybe she's obligated if she wants to go to the cemetery. There's no obligation if she's not going in contact with the dead. But if she plans on going into the room of a corpse, or she's planning on going to a cemetery, would she be obligated to find out beforehand then with the sonogram, since it's part of a regular checkup? And secondly, if she does find out that it's a male, would that change the halacha? Would that change the equation? Would that mean that she can't go in anymore? So it's a twofold question. So, if we work with the Rokeach Svek Sveka, if we say the reason why a woman, a pregnant wife of a Kohen, is permitted to go into a cemetery because it's a double doubt, then the question is she obligated to check? So that's a famous machlokes, not regarding pregnant women, but a famous machlokes Shach and the Ramah on whether one is obligated to mevarer svek sveka. If you have an opportunity to come to a solution to find out, there's a double doubt, but I could find out. It's a double doubt I don't know, but it's something that I could find out. Am I obligated to go ahead and find out and say, no, the halacha says svek sveka, I have no obligation? Yeah.
What is the actual case with the Ramah and
They're talking about chicken wings, or I should say wings of a chicken. It's a whole double doubt in terms of kashrus of a chicken, but it's not for us now. But that.
Okay.
So the Shach, the Ramah seems to be mekel. He says you don't have to, and the Shach seems to be machmir, saying you have to be mevarer or svek sveka. I get into how does svek sveka work, as we've discussed in the past. Is when I say something's permitted on svek sveka, is that's it's vaday. It's not a doubt anymore. The halacha creates the reality, and it's permitted. Or do I say no? It is. The halacha does create the reality, but it's only a doubt, and this type of doubt you're permitted. But if you could avoid the doubt, then why not? So that's a machlokes Shach and the Ramah. However, the Noda Yehuda points out, even according to the Shach, that would only be true if you could find out both doubts. But if you only could resolve one of the doubts, so then you wouldn't be obligated. In other words, in our case here,
that doesn't make any sense.
Sure does.
Why doesn't
No, it doesn't, because then you're down to one doubt. And in any other case where there were never two doubts and only one doubt, you have to be strict. So they basically reduced the situation from being one of a double doubt to one of a single doubt. And there's a gazillion single doubts, and in the case of a Torah mitzvah, you have no place to go. So
no, the other cases are, it's not that it started off as
what difference does it make where it started off? It's where it's standing right there.
No, I said no. Well, first
How
it's
do you
not.
pick which one to read?
No, first of all, it's not standing there. We didn't do. They haven't.
No, I don't think so.
She hasn't taken the sonogram yet. It's still a double doubt. The question is, right now it is a double doubt. The question is, I'm not asking this. I'll get to the second part of the question. If she already took the sonogram,
Yeah.
No, that's not what I was asking. The question here is, she hasn't taken anything yet. Would she be obligated to take the sonogram is the question. We'll get to the second part of the question in a minute. So the Noda Yehuda says that even the Shach would agree that if you can't get both doubts resolved, you're not even obligated to get one of them resolved. In other words, he says the only thing the sonogram would take care of, he's not talking about sonograms, but whatever this first, we'll talk sonograms, is we only could determine if it's a male or a female. Whether the child's going to be a nafel or not, we're not going to be able to resolve. And therefore, the Noda Yehuda wants to claim everyone would agree then, well, not everyone, but at least many people, even within the Shach, say that one would not be obligated to take the sonogram in order to, because since you could only clarify one of the doubts. So that's a general machlokas. You have to try to mavara svek svek in general. And a further machlokas, if you only could mavara one of the two, so even within this camp that says you have to, perhaps if you only could clarify one of the two, maybe you're not obligated to do it. However, some posts can point out that they have a problem with the Rokeach Svek Sveka. They don't like it Svek Sveka. Well, what's wrong with the Svek Sveka? Because we have another principle, Tosas writes in Ksuvis and other places. We need what they call in halacha safek hashakol. It has to be approximately a half and half, a 50%
likelihood.
Doubt. Yeah. So therefore, even though, one can determine if there are more females or males at any given time, but in general, whether this baby is going to be male or female is basically a 50-50 shot. However, today anyway, most of the babies are born healthy and they live. So how could you tell me it's a they don't like the second half of the suffix. Maybe the baby, okay, maybe, but it's a very small minority, and therefore they don't like the brokeach svek sveka, and therefore they say you can't that you'd have to go ahead, and anyway, you don't like the svek sveka, and so if a wife of a Kohen would want to go into a cemetery, she'd be obligated to take the sonogram and find out that it's not a male in order to go in, because they say the svek sveka of the rokeach isn't good, because it's not a good svek sveka.
But if it's not a good svek sveka in the first place, then she would simply not be allowed to go into the cemetery, because it wouldn't be a svek sveka at all, would it?
No, so according to this scholar's thought, it would not be a svek sveka, and therefore she'd have to take a sonogram to determine that the fetus is a female.
In order to be allowed to go in.
Correct.
And otherwise she simply wouldn't be allowed.
Correct. She wouldn't be able to go in because the svek sveka is no good.
Isn't there also a concern that even that sonogram won't give you 100%?
Right.
Certainty.
That's one of the assumptions I'm making, which is a question: is do we accept sonograms? Are you saying whether the sonogram is going to be clear?
It's still not 100%. There are always cases where people are told the sex of their child and then it comes out and it's different. The chances are very, very good, right?
Right.
90% sure, 95. They can't be 100%.
Right.
Sure.
So nothing's ever 100%, but we go then. We'll go with. We'll view it as as a near certainty. We have to study what the percentage of it is. 99%. But we're assuming that the sonogram is accept. 99% is probably acceptable enough. But so then she's going in because she didn't know. So it wasn't like she thinks it's a male. But so some point out they don't like the rokeach svek sveka, and therefore they say that's not what the rokeach meant. The rokeach meant, their understanding of the rokeach is, the Chassan Sofer writes, is it's not working mi svek sveka, it's working mi tam rov. It's working through the principle of the majority. In other words, what the rokeach, it's not. The simple reading of the rokeach is a svek sveka, but what they say because they say svek sveka doesn't make sense here, because it's not a suffix hashakol.
Does rokeach not say svek sveka?
Well, it depends how you. Most assume he does say it, but the way different people and whether he says it, what he means is the important question here. The Chassan Sofer says, in any machlokes, if something doesn't make any sense conceptually, then obviously you have to assume that's not what he. Even if he wrote something literally, it's not what he meant, or else. That's the general machlokes, and you have the technicals not working with the fundamentals. Which one are you going to go with? You're going to go with the technicals, like in investing. You have the people who just follow the charts, the technical investors, and you have the fundamentalists. When they both signals say goes, that's a good sign. But then many times you have a machlokes, the technicals versus the fundamentals, and then you got to make a decision. So either way, the Chasam Sofer says he means rove. So what's the rove here? It's again 50% male and female, and so number one is it could be male or female, and secondly, you have a chance that it could be a viable female, because you have half of them could be. You could have a minority being and they full. So then then it could be a chance that it could be also more. It could be a nafel, which wouldn't be a viable male. It wouldn't be a viable male. And they say that it's 50% plus there are minority nefelim, so therefore it's a rove that it's not a male fetus, and that's why the rokeach is permitted, based on rove, not based on svek sveka.
So you combine the probabilities.
Yeah, that's how the Chasam Sofer learns.
It's got to push it over 50%.
Exactly. So the problem with that, not the problem, but if you work, there's a big difference between working with rove and working with svek sveka.
Different principle, completely.
I know, different principle, but not necessarily for what you're thinking. It's a different principle. They point out is regarding svek sveka. The poskim many assume, you're not obligated, as we said, to go ahead and resolve it. Like you can leave it as, I'm not obligated. If it's a svek sveka, I wouldn't be obligated to take a sonogram to resolve it, according to many. But by rove, it's a totally different principle. By rove, we have a principle, if it's something that could be clarified, so therefore you should, midrabanan, you'd be obligated to clarify. For instance, even if there's the miyad hamatzai, let's say if there's, according to many, if there's a 10% likelihood or more that it could be, so minat Torah, it's good because you go by roll, but rabbinically speaking, I'll give you, Rav Shachter likes giving this example. Let's say most of the suits we have are in shotness.
Right.
So al trov, you're not obligated to check. However, if there's a 10% chance or higher that this specific make or whatever could be shotness, so midrabanan, you're chayiv to check. So that if you're working out trov, it's mach, so then there's a more, so as long as there's a 10%, and it's much higher, as long as there's a 10% chance or higher that it could be a viable male, then you'd have to be chayiv to do the sonogram.
Yeah, it would be the same thing if you went up to a French fry truck, because in all likelihood they're cooking nothing but French fries and using nothing but vegetable oil. But you can't just go and eat their French fries, can you?
Right,
You still need a hechsher or somebody who knows reliably that it's a safe thing to eat.
Right. Right, there could be other issues, but you're right in that point.
Well,
right.
Okay, whatever all the issues.
So that's the way Rabbi concludes. He says that he's working with the Chasim Sofer Mitam Rov, and therefore, since the sonogram doesn't cost, there's not much extra effort, and there's no money involved, basically, or you're part of you're going for the test anyway. Rabbi is machmer. He says wife of a Kohen would be obligated to take the sonogram if she wants to come in contact. If she wants to go to a funeral or come in contact with the dead. Of course, he's lenient, as everyone else is, that she is permitted to go to the hospital, because that's already a pikuach nefesh. Because you could ask, how could a wife of Kohen give birth in the hospital? There are a lot of dead bodies around. So besides dealing with all those issues, that already, since the Gemara always talks about childbirth in terms of sakana, and therefore medical studies tell us is a much better survival doing it in a hospital than in a taxi cab or somewhere else or some dark alley. So therefore, she'd be permitted to go and give birth in the hospital. But he said she would not be permitted to go to a funeral, come in contact with the dead, because it's working mitam rov, and there's at least a 10% or higher chance that it's a viable male, and he says she'd be obligated to take a sonogram. That's the opinion of Rabbi Black. Others, there are many mekilim. There are many people who don't feel as strongly. Rav Shachter, we'll see for another reason, feels as strongly. Rav Shachter is also very machmir. Rav Herschel Shachter from YU is also very machmir on this issue for a totally different reason. Maybe we'll get to. But he's also machmir of Black. But I'll tell you what the mekilim rely on. That number one is they like the svek sveka of the rokeach. What about safek hashakol? They quote another source that says, I think also Tosis and Ksuvis, or Yevamas, that if it's a natural event, so then it doesn't have to be a safek hashakol. That this is a natural thing, the childbirth. The Gemara, which is talking about safek hashakol, is talking about some behavioral issue in terms of other issues. It's a complicated subject we don't have to go into, but the principle is they say there is no, the svek sveik of the remains, because the safek hashakol isn't a problem, because you don't need a safek hashakol, based on the Gemara, that if it's a natural event. So here's a natural event, they're not doing anything, it's a normal childbirth, so they number one, they like the svek sveik of the rokeach. Secondly, they throw out another reason. There's a famous kasha of the Magen Avram, who raises it, as well as the Radvaz, who lived, I think, about 150 years before the Magen Avram. There's no problem to begin with. Like, who needs the rokeach svek sveika? We have another principle in halakha. It's called tuma belua. Let's say the Gemara's case is, let's say a woman swallows a ring, or anyone swallows a ring, and then you come in contact with the dead. The ring inside your womb, your stomach, is tahar, because it's surrounded. Anything totally surrounded is covered up, so the tumor doesn't get into the first place. So the Magen Avram and others ask on the rokeach, what do I need the svek sveika for? The fetus is inside the womb, so it's not, even without the svek sveika, it's 100% permitted. So the Radvaz answers, you're right. However, he says that we're talking about we're talking about when they're very close to term. When the woman's 9 months, about the concern is she's going to give birth. In other words, but during the time period, obviously 3 months, 6 months, whatever the time period may be, it's not an issue. We're only concerned with, we work with the sex vacant. When she's 9 months pregnant and she's about to go, then you can go anyway, because then you'll have the sex vacant. You only need the sex vacant or okay towards the last, a week or whatever the norm, time you're going to give birth. If it's a question of giving birth, so then Tuma Blua won't help, because the baby's going to come out.
Yeah, but
well, you'll see the sex of the baby, so
but
the
long
baby
before it comes out, she can be removed from wherever the tuma is.
Well, that depends how quick the water. But obviously, so with modern technology, it might not be an issue. I'm just saying he's talking many years ago, and maybe it was common a woman gave birth out on the field. Obviously it doesn't happen too often today. We have cars, phone,
Right. So we're coming down to the point where it'd be less than 10% chance that could happen.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's right. I'm saying it's I'd say most women probably wouldn't be going to the cemetery at that time either. But I'm saying it. But he says it's Tuma Belula, and the only time you have to come on the Drokeach's only talking about the last days, weeks, and that's when you have to come on to Spek Sveika. But you don't. Others say no, they don't like Tuma Belula, because when do we say Tuma Belula if it's something, a foreign object in your womb? But if it's something part of you, Uber Yerech Imo, we went up, there's a Gemara in Yavamas, they say, let's say a non-Jewish woman's pregnant, and she converts. So, and then she gives birth after she's Jewish. Does the child have to go to the mikveh? Like, does the child have to convert also? So we say no. When the woman, as long as it's based in new, as when the woman was converting, the fetus also was in the mikveh, and therefore that also considered like the child became Jewish then. So therefore we see the womb isn't a chatzitza account. So they say Tuma B'Lu only works if you have a foreign object like a ring inside or something else, but it wouldn't help here. So therefore some don't like Tuma B'Lu. And then the third reason they give the Mekilim is, well, what was the assumption we were making? We were making at what point does this fetus become a Kohen? Mm-hmm. So the assumption was always inside the womb, the moment of conception, that's when this child gets the status of a Kohen. Perhaps the child doesn't become a Kohen until birth. And that's what they claim. The Gemara talks about in Yavamas, that a fetus in the womb, it has the status of a Zar. It doesn't have the status of a Yisrael, Levi, Kohen. The father-son connection doesn't begin, the mother connection obviously begins at conception. But perhaps the father-son or father-daughter connection doesn't begin until birth. So even if you want to claim the other issues, that perhaps he doesn't become a male until birth, so it's not a Kohen, so the whole thing's a non-issue. So to summarize, you have, so the reason why Rav Shechter is machmar for another reason, he has, and the many Rosh Yeshivas say this, like Rav Chanan Wasserman, Rav Chaim Ozer, that, and it's a big kiddush, we assume that why can't a Kohen come in contact with the dead? Because he's become tamei. What happens if you could find a Heicha Timsa where you could be in the presence of the dead and not become tamei? Would a Kohen be permitted to do that? Whatever the Heicha. So Rav Shechter claims no. It's usher for a Kohen, even if he doesn't become tamei. Just like it's usher for a Kohen to become tamei, even if he didn't come, we have to explain the cases, but the concept. So he says, even if the Uber wouldn't become tamei, it's usher for them to come in contact. It's a separate share on that. So Rabbi Machmer, he says it's working mitam rov, and therefore you're obligated to take a sonogram. But Shechter doesn't like to hold a because he thinks it doesn't help. Even the fetus is enough that even if he's not obligated, you can't become tamei. However, most I say on Mekel, either based on the spec fake of the Rokeach, that we assume that Tuma Blua, that the womb does work as a cover, and therefore you don't become tamei, Or the third one is that the fetus doesn't have a status of a Kohen until birth. So again, you have to speak to your local rabbi in terms of how you ask him. But Rav Shechter and Rabbi are very machmir. But I'd say the majority opinion, they have a strong, they have what to rely on. They have a strong opinions on to be lenient.